Hello everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am bringing you guys my end of March reading wrap up. So for those of you guys that have not been subscribed to me for long, I do mid-month wrap-ups as well as end of the month wrap-ups because I just read a lot of books every month, and I know that I would hate doing just one wrap-up per month where I'm talking about 20 books at one time. So I do split up my wrap-ups into two parts essentially. So if you guys are interested in hearing me discuss the books that I read in the first half of March, I will definitely link my mid-month wrap-up up in the cards above. Oh wow, March was an insanely long month. I think that we are all feeling the same way right now because of all of this COVID-19 craziness. You know, we were all just waking up every day to worse and worse news, and I just feel like that made the month go by so slow. But I read some really great books these past couple of weeks. It was the Historical Romance Readathon, and that was hosted by Jess from Peace Love Books, Lacey from Lacey Book Lovers, and Lisa from Remarkably Lisa. I will link all of their information down below. They were really great hosts, and this was just such a fun time. I actually have a reading vlog all about my experience with that. I will also link that up in the cards above. I had so much fun with this readathon, and it just came at the perfect time. So I think what I'm going to do first is just discuss those books, and then I will move on to the rest of the books that I read this month. So the first book that I read for this Historical Romance Readathon was Lord of Scoundrels by Loretta Chase. I'm not going to go too in depth with these reviews because, like I said, I already discussed them a lot in that reading vlog that I just mentioned. But this one, I gave it 4.5 stars. I really did enjoy this. And this one follows Jessica and Sebastian. And essentially Jessica comes to Paris because her brother is under the very bad influence of this guy, Sebastian, who is the Marquis of Dane. So Sebastian and Jessica meet and there's instant chemistry between them. There ends up being a marriage of convenience as well. And I thought that this was just so well written. I loved how interesting and complex Loretta Chase made Jessica and Sebastian's characters, and I made a note that the ending for this was just perfect. So yeah, I definitely wholeheartedly recommend this, especially if you are someone who hasn't read a historical romance before. I do think that this would be a good place to start. And the next book that I read was the Wallflower Wager by Tessa Dare. This is her third book in the Girl Meets Duke series, and I loved this so much. I gave it 5 stars. For those of you guys that may not know, Tessa Dare is by far my favorite historical romance author, and I've only read 3 of her books, but I have just adored all 3 of them. And so this series centers around 4 best friends. They are all wallflowers, and they're just kind of outcasts of society, and they don't really care about society. They just love being friends with each other, and so each book is their separate romances. And so this third book is definitely the quirkiest of the 3. This one centers around Penelope. She's got a ton of different animals. She's got an otter, a goat, cats, dogs, and this man, Gabriel Duke, who is a self-made businessman. He buys the house next door to hers, and he wants to flip it and sell it specifically because Penelope is a member of nobility. So he knows that people will want to live next to someone so distinguished, but he very soon realizes that she is not your typical member of nobility. She is very quirky and very different. Their relationship kind of starts because he wants to get rid of all of these animals so that someone will actually want to buy the house that he is fixing up. And I just loved everything about this. The relationship between Gabe and Penny was everything. I, as always, loved the side characters and the role that they played in this. The animals were just so cute and fun. So if you're looking for a historical romance that is definitely different and unique and just a really great time, I would wholeheartedly recommend this. Next book that I want to discuss is Lady Sophia's Lover by Lisa Kleypas. This is actually my very first book from Lisa Kleypas. A lot of booktubers recommend her because she is a lot of people's absolute favorite historical romance author. So I knew going into this readathon that I had to try out one of her books, and the plot of this one definitely intrigued me. So this one is about Lady Sophia, and she is trying to exact revenge on this man that she knows to have had a role in her brother's passing away, and that man's name is Sir Ross. He is essentially in charge of the Bow Street Runners, and the Bow Street Runners was essentially like an elite police force in London during this time. So she inserts herself into his life, becomes like his assistant, and also becomes like a housekeeper for him, and her goal is to essentially ruin him in every way possible. So she starts going through his files and she starts seducing him because she wants him to fall in love with her so that she then can break his heart. And first of all, what really captivated me about this book was the chemistry between Ross and Sophia. And there were other things going on in this story, given that it is centering around the Bow Street Runners, so there definitely was some action and some really cool dramatic moments, and even some plot twists that definitely took me by surprise. I also really loved the relationship between Ross and Sophia because it was always open and honest, and the smut in this was really good, and there were some really interesting and creative scenes as well. So yeah, I definitely recommend this. I keep flip-flopping between like a 4 and a 4.5, but yeah, my first Lisa Kleypas book definitely did not disappoint, and I cannot wait to read more from this author. And we are going to talk about my 1-star read of the month, and that is In Bed with a Highlander by Maya Banks. Now, I'm not going to talk about this book too much because I ranted about this in that reading vlog that I mentioned earlier in the video, and I also have a very detailed review on my Goodreads. So if you guys are interested, I always link my Goodreads and my Twitter accounts down below. So yeah, I DNF'd this at the 42% mark. And that is because there is essentially a rape scene that occurs between the main hero and heroine. The hero essentially deflowers the heroine in a very brutal way after their marriage of convenience at the beginning of the book. Yeah, this book just made me sick to my stomach, and I couldn't even bear to read any more after that really disturbing scene. But luckily the next book I read was a lot better, and that was One Good Earl Deserves a Lover by Sarah McLean. This is essentially about this woman named Pippa who, first of all, I loved her character so much. She is really quirky. She is essentially a nerd in every sense of the word, and she's really into science. I really loved seeing her like scientific journal entries throughout this book. But essentially in this story, Pippa is getting ready to get married, but she wants to learn about love and sex and things like that before she gets married, and so she decides to go to this man named Cross, who is a co-owner of this gaming hell, which was essentially a casino back in those days. Because he has a reputation of being a ladies' man and knowing all about that stuff. And so she tries to persuade him to essentially be her tutor, but at first he refuses, and that's kind of how this story starts. I really enjoyed this. I am settling on a 4-star rating. Like I said, Pippa is just such a great heroine. I liked Cross as the main hero, but to be honest, he wasn't anything all that special. I definitely think that Pippa is the star of this show. So keep in mind that this is very slow burn. They didn't even kiss until like the 70% mark, so I would be aware of that before going into this, but I do think that Sarah McLean did such a good job of writing this that I didn't even mind that. So yeah, this was overall a fun time, and I definitely recommend it. And the very last book that I read for the historical romance readathon was A Duke Is Never Enough by Darcy Burke. This is also an arc that I got off of NetGalley, so thank you so much to NetGalley for giving me this arc. I've read now 3 books of Darcy Burke's at this point, and I have enjoyed all of them. She is definitely becoming a new favorite historical romance author for me personally. And so this is book 2 in her Spitfire Society trilogy. I think it's a trilogy. So this story centers around Phoebe and Marcus. Marcus is definitely known to be a rake. He's a ladies' man, and Phoebe is someone who was spurned by this man that she was betrothed to, and so she also has no interest in being in a long-term relationship or anything like that. But the two of them meet and there is instant chemistry. I really love the two of them as a couple. I also really appreciate Darcy Burke's writing style because it's very easy and accessible, especially to someone who has never read a historical romance before. I do think that someone like Darcy Burke is a good place to start. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. I'm giving it 4.5 stars. I'm really looking forward to the 3rd book in this series, which I think is coming out in May, so hopefully I get that e-arc as well. The next book I want to discuss is Ignite Me by Tahira Mafi. This is the 3rd book in her Shatter Me series, and I liked this. I'm giving it 3 stars. So this is the ending of like the first trilogy of this series, And first of all, it definitely does not feel like a finale. I definitely feel like there was a lot of open-endedness and there needed to be at least a fourth book, because to be quite honest, there wasn't much of an ending to this book. Also, there's like no plot until like the last 100 pages. At the same time, I still really love Mothy's writing style, and these books are paced really, really well. I definitely flew through these first 3 books, and I also did find that Juliet, who is the main character, was more likable in this installment. I'm still not a fan of who her love interest in this book is. I do think that this would be a good series to read right now during the craziness that we're all going through in this moment of time, because like I said, Mothy's writing style is very immersive and these books are really fast paced, and if you do enjoy like messy YA romances and dystopian, I do think that these books could be a good option for you. Next, I binged the entire Folk of the Air trilogy by Holly Black. So that includes The Cruel Prince, The Wicked King, and The Queen of Nothing. I actually just posted my reading vlog where I documented my experience binging these books in just 4 days, so I will definitely link that up in the cards above. I had such a fun time filming that vlog for you guys, and I really loved this series so much. I would definitely say that The Wicked King for me was the weakest book of the series, but I still gave that 4 stars. I still enjoyed that. The Cruel Prince and The Queen of Nothing, I gave both of those 5 stars. Also, just to give you a basic synopsis, this follows Jude Duarte, and when she was 7 years old, this fairy guy just shows up to her house where she's living with her family, and he murders her parents right in front of her, and then he takes her, her twin sister Taryn, and their older sister Vivi back with him to the land of the Fae. Now it's 10 years later, she's been living in Elfame. So this series essentially centers around all of the different strategizing and court intrigue of the High Court of Fairy and her relationship with Prince Cardan, who is the Cruel Prince. So yeah, if you want to know my detailed thoughts about these 3 books, definitely go check out my reading vlog. But I overall really enjoyed this series, and I can definitely see why it is so hyped on book 2. Alright guys, we have 2 more books to talk about. The next book that I read was Wallbanger by Alice Clayton. If I'm not mistaken, I think this is a 50 Shades of Grey fan fiction, or at least like that's how this book / series started out. So I did not really enjoy this. I'm giving it 2.5 stars. This centers around Caroline and Simon. They are next door neighbors, and this book starts out really ridiculous as Caroline wakes up in the middle of the night because she hears thumping against her bedroom wall, and that is because Simon, her next door neighbor, is having sex with a woman. They're being very loud. Their relationship basically starts when she like beats down his door to like yell at him about how loud he is being when he has sex with different people. So my main problem with this was that it was way too long. I think that the author could have cut out at least 75 pages of this. There were definitely some times when I was getting really bored, and I would have DNF'd this, but I did have the audiobook, and so it was just something for me to listen to while I was cleaning my room and things like that. I will say I did enjoy the smut in this. I thought that was pretty well done, but other than that, this book was overall very meh, and I definitely do not recommend it. And the very last book that I want to discuss is The Virgin and the Rogue by Sophie Jordan. Sophie Jordan is a historical romance author that I was introduced to when I read a novella of hers last year. I really enjoyed that. So I've definitely been looking forward to reading more of her full-length novels, and I got an ARC for this off of NetGalley. So once again, thank you so much to NetGalley. And this is like the 6th book in her Rogue Files series, but as is the case with pretty much every historical romance series, these can all be read as standalones, and so this one centers around Charlotte. And at the very beginning of this book, she goes to her sister, who is kind of like an herbalist scientist. She wants a tonic to relieve her menstrual pain, and so her younger sister Nora gives her a tonic, but apparently she put different herbs in different doses than she usually does, and so this ends up essentially being a love potion. Charlotte just gets like extremely aroused after drinking this potion. On the other side of the story, there's this guy Kingston who comes to live at the house that Charlotte is living in because Charlotte's brother-in-law is also Kingston's stepbrother. So essentially what happens is that Kingston and Charlotte run into each other while Charlotte is extremely aroused from this love potion. And so she essentially jumps his bones. And so yeah, there's some smutty delights pretty early on in this book. But I did really enjoy this overall because I've actually never read a book about a love potion, so I really loved that plot point. And I did come to really enjoy both Charlotte and Kingston's characters, as well as the side characters. I thought that they added a lot to the story as well. So I would recommend this if this plot intrigues you at all. I definitely had a fun time reading this, and I am settling on giving this 4 stars. All right, guys, that's going to be it for my end of March wrap up. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope that you would consider pressing that like button and subscribing, and I thank you in advance if you do. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!